they're clearly not going to be creating in their committee a timing problem.
Calling the Assembly Insurance Committee meeting to order. We don't have a quorum yet, so we will start out as a subcommittee. For members that aren't here yet, please know that we have started and we're in room 437. Just one announcement. Joel Anderson has been permanently assigned to be a member of this committee, so we welcome him. And with that, we do have two senators waiting to present. Let's start with Senator DeSaulnier. Senator DeSaulnier has 3 bills. Your first bill is SB 145.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. SB 145 is a very straightforward bill, and it has to do with workers' compensation, the workers' compensation system, and prohibiting discrimination in that system, trying to make sure that that when decisions are made by physicians in terms of individual claimants and clients when they come in for workers' compensation, that it's based on medical records, not on risk factors. There have been a number of incidents since SB 899 was passed in 2004, the workers' compensation reform, where we feel that unfortunately some individuals have, in the insurance industry and physicians, have used risk factors too aggressively, even though it's against the law. So this law basically just reiterates that discrimination is prohibited. There's one particular incident that Assemblymember Yamada has a bill on, and we're working with her office. It's very similar, but it relates to an incident in Fairfield where a worker, African-American worker, went to work at the dollar store. A white supremacist decided that he was going to kill the first person, or shoot the first African-American person he met that day, went into the Dollar Tree, shot her, and unfortunately killed her. Her 7-year-old daughter was refused any kind of compensation based on these risk factors. After a public outcry, Dollar Tree actually did what they were socially responsible for. There are a number of other incidents where this has happened. So we feel it's important that we reiterate that it should be based on medical records and not risk factors, and we're just reiterating that discrimination should not be part of the workers' compensation process. And with that, I will turn it over to our sponsors.
Thank you. We have a motion. Oh yeah, no, we don't have a quorum yet, but we'll keep that into account. Yes.
I'm Sue Borg. I'm the legislative chair of the California Applicants Attorneys Association, and I'd just like to reinforce what Senator DeSaulnier had said. The purpose of this bill is not in any way to roll back the reforms of 899, but rather to clarify that those reforms were never intended to take away the rights of injured workers to have the same prohibitions against discrimination that all the rest of us have, whether injured or not. And this bill simply seeks to clarify that. Some people have said that the bill is not necessary because this already is what the law is. However, as pointed out by the senator, we have incident after incident where we see actual trial court decisions, deposition testimony confirming that, in fact, doctors feel compelled by 899 to apportion to discriminating to factors of personal characteristics and genetic characteristics, and trial court judges have upheld that, and people have to go to the Court of Appeal to find any relief, which is certainly not what the intention of 899 was.
Thank you. Let's hear from the next witness.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Angie Way on behalf of the California Labor Federation. Discrimination of any kind does not belong in our workers' compensation system, and this bill simply codifies that. We'd ask for your support.
Thank you. Others in support?
Deanna Furman on behalf of the California Nurses Association, also in strong support.
Thank you.
Thanks, Deanna.
Yeah, believe it or not, DeSaulnier is coming back to the Assembly.
It's a drilling bill.
Any others in support? Any individuals in opposition to the bill? Please step forward.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members. Julianne Briles here on behalf of the California Association of Joint Powers Authorities. in opposition to the apportionment section of the bill in SB 145. Contrary to the proponents' assertions, we do believe that the law is very clear here that you cannot apportion to risk factors. The court came down in the Vera decision saying that you could not apportion to the risk factors. It was improper to do so. And we think that putting this into statute will actually create more litigation and more ambiguity on this issue rather than creating less. And for that reason, we're asking for a no vote.
Very good.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Michael Corbett representing the CSAC Excess Insurance Authority. And first of all, I want to apologize. Apparently the letter did not get to either the author or the committee, so I apologize for that. But not to reiterate what Ms. Broyle said, our concerns are the same as those stated by her, and we actually believe that the bill will result in a greater amount of litigation in California.
Amber Wiley with the Alpha Fund. For the reasons previously stated, we're also in opposition.
Very good. Any others in opposition? Any questions or comments from my colleagues at this time? I see none. I want to thank you as a senator for your leadership on this. As was mentioned, discrimination doesn't belong in our workers' comp system, so appreciate you bringing this good measure forward. If you'd like to, offer a brief close, that would be appropriate.
At the appropriate time, I would just ask you all for an aye vote.
Very good, and do know that that the chair is recommending a support position on this bill.
I appreciate that, Mr. Chair.
We don't have a quorum. Yeah. Let's move on to a second bill.
I see, Mr.
Maybe we'll get a
Is
quorum for a
charming
second
as
bill.
ever.
He has your charm. We have item number 2, SB 186, also by Senator Sonnier. Please present.
Yes. I'm told it's important, Mr. Nava, to be charming when you're in an election cycle, so I'll try. SB 186 also is a relatively, or it is a simple bill. It just removes the sunset on pre-designation for workers' compensation. The Public Policy Institute did a study recently that showed that there was higher employee satisfaction when they could pre-designate a physician who they were familiar with. Actually, we believe results in lower costs and more confidence by the worker in the process. So this had bipartisan support, and I would ask for your support. With that, I'd turn it over to my splendid witnesses.
Very good. Let's hear from the witnesses.
I guess I should let ladies go first.
Really? I wasn't talking about
Yes,
Aaron.
please do, Senator Reid.
Talking about Angie and Christy.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Christy Bauma representing the California Professional Firefighters. Pleased to be in support and co-sponsors of this bill, as we have in years past. Since the reforms of SB 899, we have seen the pre-designation option dramatically limited and narrowed to your personal treating physician. But even under those constraints, my members use pre-designation as an option more often than not in every agency due to the fact that they rely on the confidence they feel going to their personal treating physician, the integration of care that they get, and their strong desire to return back to work. And so we ask that you support this bill.
Thank you. Next witness.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Angie Way, California Labor Federation, in support. The point of workers' comp reform in 2004, one of the points was to decrease friction in the system. When an injured worker gets to see his or her own doctor, we think that helps decrease that friction. People feel more at ease with the words of their doctor rather than and the treatment protocols of their doctor, as opposed to what they consider the company doctor. Under a pre-designated physician, things stay the same. You go into a group health environment where group health rules apply and a workers' comp fee schedule applies to the treating physician. So no costs would be increased as a result of being able to see your pre-chosen doctor. And finally, I'd say it's been an interest of the legislature to try and integrate group health and medical treatment in workers' comp, something that some have called 24-hour care. Pre-designation is a solid first step, a continued step in being able to integrate that kind of medical treatment. Ask for your support.
Thank you. Next witness.
Mr. Chair, members, Deanna Furman on behalf of the California Nurses Association. Our members, too, experience a lot of work-related injuries, and we're interested in preserving this right.
Thank you.
Sue Borg for the California Applicants Attorneys Association, and for all the reasons stated, we also support this bill.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, members, Aaron Reed representing PORAC, Highway Patrol Association, and CDF firefighters, all in support.
Thank you. Any other witnesses in support of the bill? Any individuals in opposition to the bill?
We have a second quorum.
If the opposition could step forward. As they're stepping forward, I do notice we now have a quorum, so please call the roll.
Solario,
Present.
Garrick, Anderson, Calderon, Carter, Fuhrer, Hayashi, Nava, Nilo, Torres.
We have a quorum. Let's continue now with the opposition.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, again, and members. Julianne Broyles here on behalf of the California Association of Joint Powers Authority in opposition to SB 186. The predesignation was enacted as part of a follow-through or a stopgap measure as part of the SB 899 reforms to allow that a period of time where people could predesignate their physicians, and then it was intended to end. This bill now eliminates that sunset and extends the predesignation going forward. There are a lot of issues surrounding the predesignation that employers have with that, and thank you for the very good analysis by Mr. Rakic. It really went into the issues and the concerns that the proponents and opponents have about the issue. But right now, with the medical provider networks that some employers have established, the predesignation will allow the self-referral or re-referral to physicians outside of that MPN network that the employer set up, over which the employer has no control. That is not clear. Then the analysis so notes that when they go for that independent medical review for providers that are outside the medical network, that there's not even really clarity whether the employer could ask for an independent medical review if they have cause of concern over the treatment being prescribed for their injured worker. We do think that there is a lot of reasons why this bill shouldn't go forward, but for the most part, we think that it's something that will really cause more problems than actually cure in the long run. Ask for no vote.
Thank you. Let's hear from
Mr. Chairman and members, Paul Smith with the Regional Council of Rural Counties, representing boards of supervisors of many rural counties. Ms. Broyles said it best. The issue of predesignation was a stopgap issue when the reforms were created in 2004. And again, as the analysis points out, if we could retain MPN construction with referrals beyond the predesignation of the personal physician, we would be okay with that. Unfortunately, that's not what this bill does, so we remain in opposition.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Michael Corbett representing the CSAC Excess Insurance Authority. For the reasons previously stated, we too are in opposition to this bill.
Thank you. Let's hear from the next witnesses in opposition.
Thomas Vu with the California Special Districts Association, also in opposition. Thank you.
Natasha Carl on behalf of the League of California Cities, also in opposition.
Amber Wiley with the Alpha Fund, also in opposition.
Thank you. Any others in opposition? Seeing no questions, comments from my colleagues, Assemblymember Nava.
Yeah, can I have the representative from the applicant's attorneys come back up, please? Hi. Question. Part of what I heard the opposition say is that the current predesignation has a sunset because it was to be a transitional opportunity. What's the status of the regulations that were supposed to be developed? I mean, my impression is that there were a whole series of regulations that were supposed to be developed for workers' comp that hasn't been accomplished.
Well, there have been some regulations. I'm not sure which ones you're referring to. There are medical treatment guidelines that have recently been put into effect.
I think Ms. Way, do you know what I'm talking about?
There's been a report from the Division of Workers' Compensation. Maybe that's what you're referring to, and I'll let Angie. But that report really didn't indicate one way or the other, as I understand. Angie.
Thank you, Mr. Nava, for the question. Angie Way, California Labor Federation. There were regulations that were put into effect to implement the predesignation provisions. The statute changed predesignation to be a very limited right. There's certain conditions you have to meet. You have to have group health insurance, for example, to be able to predesignate a treating physician. Regulations were adopted, and the program has been governed. On a separate note, the author, Mr. Senator DeSania, indicates that the Labor Code required there to be an evaluation of the predesignation as a program, for lack of a better term. A study and a written document has been produced. I think it's arguable whether or not it's an evaluation.
Okay. And the point, thank you very much for that. But I think the point is, before people can talk about how this was a transitional measure so that it could be, as the rest of the program was developed, it's pretty clear to me that the balance of the program hasn't been developed. And complaints that I hear from injured workers and from applicants' attorneys is that there are significant areas that have yet to be completed. So I think it's eminently fair that if the process that was supposed to be put in place, the framework and then to fill that out has yet to be done, we should be moving forward on predesignation of a physician. I don't think there's any question that patients develop a relationship with a physician over time, that patients feel more comfortable with a physician who they've known for a while, and that physicians, having had experience with a particular patient, are best able to evaluate someone's progress and are best able to make determinations about that patient's health and about the course of care that should be afforded them. I mean, I for many, many years before I was elected to office, my legal practice was medical malpractice defense. And it's very, very clear, based on my experiences, that there is a relationship that is formed between a physician and a caregiver, a healthcare professional, that is very nuanced. It is not the simple application of some kind of formula in evaluating someone's condition. And so I think if employers were interested in, and I think they are, interested in providing the best kind of assistance for an injured worker so that they can go back to work sooner rather than later, then you want them to be able to continue with their own physician. I'll move the bill.
We have a motion by Assemblymember Nava, second by Assemblymember Fear. Assemblymember Calderon.
I have a question to the opposition. Who's the brave one? All right. The bill prohibits discrimination based on, which one is this?
This is the second bill. Item number 2.
All right, good. You passed the test. I want to make sure you're paying attention.
And a very excellent question, Assemblymember Calderon.
But you're right, it does prohibit discrimination.
Assemblymember Nilo.
Are we in the insurance committee? Never mind.
Of the California State Legislature.
Yes. Assembly, to be specific. Yeah. Senator, the concerns that the opposition have seems to me is reasonable. For a person to pick their own personal physician, I think, is a reasonable thing. And as in another life, in a prior life, an employer, I agree with what Mr. Nava said, that we're certainly interested in somebody who's injured on the job getting the best treatment and returning to work as quickly as possible. But the employer or the workers' comp system is indeed paying the bills, and it appears that unlike a situation where the medical plan has a certain amount of control over referrals and the like, because this is not the insurance company or the plan from which the personal physician comes, that there isn't any control beyond the personal physician or the ability to request a independent medical review and those things that it would seem to be reasonable for the employer and the workers' comp insurance company to have some input relative to controlling costs. Quality of care is important, but not to the exclusion of any ability to monitor and control costs, not to compromise care. So this bill, I see everybody's gathered up here to respond to this, which is good, because the bill could be supportable, but for that provision. That concerns me. So it's been expressed. You have chosen not to amend the bill. Could you tell me why?
Well, I think there's part of what I think is necessary is a fuller evaluation, and in the meantime, this is working. So I would argue there still are controls. The employer still has the ability to have input, and that the opposite is true, that having a relationship, the employee, with a physician that they trust leads to actually cost avoidance because they feel confidence
I don't question that.
in that first. That first
part of it I don't question.
So I would let the sponsor speak to the control issues. But I believe there's evidence, and there is still the ability to control cost and to protect the employer. So,
thank you, Senator, and thank you, Mr. Nilo, for the question. I would separate into two parts: medical treatment and then the cost issues. On the medical treatment side, the existing law says that once you pre-designate your treating physician, group health rules apply. So it's not like there's no medical treatment guidelines in group health. All those rules apply here. To be eligible to pre-designate your treating physician, you have to have group health care. You would pre-designate your treating doctor, my normal group health doctor, and that person, if there were referrals, would refer to people within their group health network. So it's not as if they're referring people to outside of a group health network or doctors that they don't have a relationship with in terms of the quality of the care. So that's on the medical treatment side. There are guidelines there, treatment guidelines that exist, and it's the same as the group health program. On the cost side, these doctors get paid under a workers' comp fee schedule. So it's not as if there's no schedule in terms of what the doctors pay. If you are seeing the treating physician or if you are seeing a doctor that the employer chose, their fee schedule is the same. So in terms of cost, we have not seen any evidence, demonstrated evidence, that costs go up when you see your own doctor. Instead, what we cite is the Public Policy Institute of California study that shows that costs stay the same if you see your own chosen doctor or the employer doctor. What does change is employee satisfaction. That employees... they're more comfortable seeing their own doctor, and I think that makes common sense to many of us. And so we would then argue that if employee satisfaction goes up, that helps contain costs, because then there's less friction, potentially less litigation in the system, because injured workers are more at ease with their own doctors.
I want the opposition to say something, but I don't dispute anything you say, and all of that is a function of the primary care physician, the personal physician, not so much the referrals. When I go to my primary care physician, I have a special issue, and he or she, well, in my case, he is referring me to a specialist. I end up going to that specialist that he refers me to, and it's not necessarily the same one all the time. Now, there are times when I might request an individual, but that's rare, and I will go to the individual, the other doctor to whom he refers me. And if the only issue were a schedule of fees that are paid for certain services, then the workers' comp carriers and employers wouldn't be so concerned about their medical provider network. But they have a medical provider network because that provides an extra degree of control for them relative to cost issues, quality of care being a separate issue, as you rightly pointed out. So if there is no importance to the medical provider network, then why does it exist? And you're basically saying that there's no importance to the medical provider network, or for that matter, an independent medical review.
Do you wish to briefly respond, and then we'll hear briefly from the opposition? No, let's hear from...
and then I'll hear from the opponent.
Ms. Way, why don't you briefly respond to that, and then we'll go to the opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Many employers who have created medical provider networks have, quite frankly, simply adopted their group health networks as their MPNs. So, in fact, when you're choosing your own doctor to list as pre-designated, oftentimes you're choosing a doctor who's already in the medical provider network. And again, I would just quickly reiterate that because you have to have group health insurance to have the right to pre-designate, you will pre-designate a doctor that would refer you to inside your group health network. Part of the the policy rationale for pre-designation is to really test and look at the integration of group health medical insurance and medical treatment in the workers' comp system. And this is a good path for us to pursue and maintain this right so that we can see if we can help control costs by integrating these two systems.
Very good. Let's hear briefly from the opposition on this.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Nilo, for bringing up the question. The issue that you articulated about the original treating physician, the primary treating physician that's pre-designated, we agree. The California Association of Joint Powers Authority are self-insured local entities that basically do their own group programs, but they also have MPNs, the medical provider networks, and they are not the same treating specialists in an MPN that you might have in an HMO type offering to your employees. Most of the time when you have an MPN, you are looking at people who specialize in occupational injuries and illnesses, and they have a definite specialization subgroup within that MPN. Our core problem with SB 186 is that the treating physician is permitted to send out specialist referrals that are outside the MPN. The MPNs are very efficient cost controls for local agencies, school districts, library districts, and et cetera. And so that's why it is of concern to CJAPA. We don't think that allowing this, if the bill was amended to say that they could only refer within that MPN list, we would definitely go back and review our position on this bill. But right now, the bill does not say that. But that is our big concern about the bill.
No. I know Assembly Member Garrick has a comment or question. I would note to the committee that the senator's to be chairing a committee starting 5 minutes ago, and he also has one more bill to present. So hopefully we can
I'll make
continue
my
along
question
quickly.
very brief, Mr.
Please.
Chair. Thank you. In the correspondence reviewing quickly that came in, both in support and opposed, Cal Chamber mentioned that the study was to be done and completed by 12/31 of 08. Angie, Ms. Way, were you familiar with that? And is this the proposed study that is dated May 4th?
Yes, it is.
And it really isn't a study, is it?
No.
With any conclusion. So the work wasn't.
We called it a document, not an evaluation.
That's it. Thank you for responding to that.
Thank you. We do have a motion and a second. What I would say is what we're talking about here is continuing with existing law. Right now, employees can pre-designate a physician. That this would remove a sunset. The sunset is set to expire at the end of this calendar year, and I think the program works well. I think it's important to maintain the relationship between a doctor and a patient, and this bill continues to allow for that. So I'm proud to be supporting this bill as well. With that, let's call the roll.
Solorio?
Aye.
Solorio, aye. Garrick?
Aye.
Garrick, aye. Anderson? Calderon? Aye. Calderon, aye. Carter? Aye. Carter, aye. Fuhr?
Aye.
Fuhr, aye. Hayashi? Aye. Hayashi, aye. Nava?
Aye.
Nava, aye. Nilo?
No.
Nilo, no. Torres?
That bill is out. We're now going to go back to item 1, SB 145, that we've already heard. We do need a motion and a second. This is a bill regarding the apportionment of permanent disability. Assemblymember Fuhr makes the motion. We have a second by Assemblymember Carter. With that, let's call the roll on that bill.
Solorio?
Aye.
Solorio, aye. Garrick?
No.
Garrick, no. Anderson?
Aye.
Anderson, aye. Calderon? Aye. Calderon, aye. Carter? Aye. Carter, aye. Fuhr?
Aye.
Fuhr, aye. Hayashi? Aye. Hayashi, aye. Nava? Aye. Nava, aye. Nilo?
No.
Nilo, no. Torres?
That bill is out as well. Congratulations. Senator DeSanya has one more bill, and again, he does have a committee he needs to go preside over, so hopefully we can be quick on this committee. And Assemblymember Nilo continues to have questions, so beware on that. Please present your bill.
I've always said I'd definitely buy a car from Mr. Nilo. 313 is a bill, the genesis of which is to address some issues around the underground economy. It actually came from restaurateur who was found to not be providing workers' compensation, and went on television and said that even though after he was found guilty and fined, he said it was a better business decision because the fines didn't equate to the cost if he had had workers' compensation. So in the simplest forms, 313 increases the fines for employers who refuse to have workers' compensation. It has had no votes, bipartisan support. It is supported by both the California Chamber of Commerce and the California State Labor Fed. And with that, I'll turn it over to the bill's sponsor, the California Small Business Council.
Very good. Thank you. Fairly straightforward bill. If everyone could be brief with their comments, that would be appreciated.
I'm Scott Hauge. I'm the president and founder of Small Business California. We represent thousands of small businesses around the state. I'm also a small business owner. On an annual basis, we do a survey of the issues that affect small business. And in the last 2 years, over 50% of the small businesses that responded to the survey have said the underground economy impacts their business. Simply, the underground economy creates an unlevel playing field, and one of the issues is workers' compensation, not purchasing workers' compensation, which puts them at the good guys, if you will, at a disadvantage with those without insurance. The other aspect is those that don't have insurance. It comes from the state fund that reimburses the injured individual, and the good guys, if you will, those that are following the rules, end up paying for that. So we urge your support of this bill.
Thank you. Let's hear from the witnesses.
Lachlan Taylor of the staff of the Commission on Health and Safety and Workers' Compensation, here to provide technical support and answer any questions the committee may have.
Thank you.
Phil Vermeulen, representing the engineering contractors, the fence contractors of California, Marine Builders Association, and the Flasher Barricade Association. The underground economy is killing my legitimate contractors. Anything we can do to help snuff that out, we're totally in support for that. So we're strongly behind this bill. Urge your aye vote. Thank you.
Angie Way, California Labor Federation, in support.
Thank you. Any others in support? Please step forward.
Move the bill.
We have a motion by Assemblymember Fear. Second by Assemblymember Anderson, who I welcomed earlier as a permanent member of our committee, so welcome. So others in support. Name and organization, please.
Sue Borg for the California Applicants Attorneys Association. We're supporting the bill going out of committee, although we're still working on some of the language that we have some issues on.
Very good.
Lori Kammer on behalf of MedX Healthcare, representing 1,300 employers who receive workers' comp services from MedX Healthcare. In support.
Thank you. Any individuals in opposition to the bill? Seeing no opposition, we do have a motion second. Any questions or comments from my colleagues? Seeing, and I do want to thank you, Senator, for bringing this forward. Sometimes it is easier for the bad guys just to pay a fine rather than do the right thing. So I think this bill, helps with the issue we still have in the underground economy of people not being responsible. So appreciate your leadership.
Thank you.
Any brief close?
Respectfully
Senator?
ask for your aye vote.
Very good. We have a motion, a second. Let's call the roll.
Solorio?
Aye.
Solorio, aye. Garrick? Anderson? Aye. Anderson, aye. Calderon? Aye. Calderon, aye. Carter? Carter, aye. Fuhrer? Aye. Fuhrer, aye. Hayashi? Hayashi, aye. Hayashi, aye. Nava? Aye. Nava, aye. Nilo?
Aye.
Nilo, aye. Torres?
Bill has 8 votes. It's out. Congratulations. Next, we have Senator Calderon. Today was the DeSanya Calderon show. They each have about 3 bills. Welcome, Senator.
Thank you. Okay, move to kill the bill.
Last time you did that when he was not here. At least this time the senator's here to defend himself.
Move to kill my brother.
Senator has 3 bills. Let's start with item number 3, SB 291. Welcome, Senator.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. I'm really happy to present to you SB 291. As I open on this bill, I want first to offer, as the author's amendments, those changes known to your staff that reflect the recently concluded discussions with the Department of Insurance. Thank you, Mr. Solorio, for your staff's invaluable assistance and input in this matter. As you know, our nation and our state are in a grip of a very severe economic downturn. Trouble in the housing sector brought us here, and most observers agree that a housing sector recovery built on healthy lending practices will be a key to recovery. SB 291 will advance California's stake in a housing sector recovery that is built on sound law and sustainable items.
Motion by Councilmember Garrick, second by Councilmember Anderson.
Let me stress under SB 291 that the Commissioner will have the full authority to force a PMI insurer to stop writing business because of a declining policyholder surplus. Regulatory authority will not decline at all. Regulatory discretion will increase. Just as back in the 1990s with homeowners insurance, when capacity in the PMI market declines, the real estate market suffers. The availability of mortgage finance credit will shrink. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac will be able to purchase fewer loans, so increased pressure will be felt in the housing market in general. For better or for worse, California's economy depends on a very healthy housing market. Be the best interest of California's homeowners and consistent with all of our efforts to promote an economic recovery to keep PMI insurers writing new businesses, provided their overall business approach is sound. This bill strikes the right balance. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Thank you. Let's hear from the witnesses in support.
Sure. Mr. Chairman, members, John Norwood on behalf of the Mortgage Insurance Companies of America. The 6 companies that write mortgage guarantee insurance nationwide are responsible for facilitating some 25 million families and individuals in gaining home ownership over the years that they've been in business. Frankly, the regulation of this industry is in need of being modernized to reflect theories of risk versus capital that other lines of insurance are currently subject to. That is a multi-year effort that would involve the National Association of Insurance Commissioners and regulators from various states, and frankly, we're just not there yet. SB 291 is an interim step designed to keep these insurers in the market writing insurance to support the real estate business and an economic recovery. As the Senator briefly explained, current law requires these insurers to automatically cease writing business when they reach a certain policyholder surplus. This, despite the fact that they're adequately capitalized to write significantly more business. This results from the fact that this minimum policyholder position standard was an arbitrary standard that was placed essentially right in the middle of the range that the one study done on this in 1960 determined was a safe range for mortgage insurance companies to write. As a result, it's fairly clear that these companies could write substantially more insurance, but in a safe range, but for this arbitrary standard. SB 291 simply allows some flexibility. It allows the insurer to request the commissioner waive this particular provision of the law, requires the insurer to provide information for the commissioner to review, allows the commissioner to hire experts at the cost of the insurer to review that material, also hold a hearing, again, which would be paid for by the insurer. So what we're doing is adding flexibility to the law. We're not taking any authority whatsoever away from the insurance commissioner. So for all those reasons, we would urge this committee to support the bill. And we're here to answer any questions.
Very good. Others in support of the bill?
Good morning. John Ross on behalf of Genworth Financial Company, which is a mortgage insurer, but also the Mortgage Bankers Association. I think the interests of the mortgage insurers has been covered, so let me speak quickly to the interests of the lenders on this. Obviously, markets remain illiquid and tight. Mortgage insurance serves as a valuable way for homeowners to get into new homes with less capital down. Some of the other tools that were available in prior market cycles, seconds that were readily available, are not available now, which makes the mortgage insurance even more important. And we're very concerned about a disruption in the availability of that product and the impact that would have on the market. So we fully support this bill and think it's the right step.
Thank you. Others?
Mr. Chairman and members, I'm Stan Wigg with the California Association of Realtors. We share the same concerns that John just raised about
tying up the market if we can't get adequate supply of mortgage insurance. It's vital to making a transaction go. How they work out the threshold is really more technical than it is policy for us. It's the issue of having that available. It's really important.
Very good. Thank you. Any others in support of the bill? Any individuals in opposition to the bill? Seeing none, any questions or comments from my colleagues? No, we do have a motion and a second. I do want to, thank the senator for bringing this forward. Our housing market continues to have challenges of many types, and we want to make sure here in California, where some of these issues started, that we don't create any additional issues by having problems with the mortgage insurance industry. So I thank you for your leadership. If you'd like to provide a brief close.
Yes, I would. Thank you. And again, I appreciate the opportunity to present this bill. In very simple layperson terms, in order to buy a home, if you don't have 20% down, you're going to need mortgage insurance. If there isn't adequate surplus available for mortgage insurance companies to provide mortgage insurance, people aren't going to be able to buy homes. As you may or may not know, I authored the new housing tax credit, which provides a $10,000 tax credit for new home buyers, not first-time home buyers. And this would, work hand in hand with that, allowing more people to buy new homes, get into new homes with less money down, provided there's an adequate surplus of mortgage insurance. So this bill just allows the mortgage insurance company, when they're reaching their surplus limits by, according to current law, current regulation, allows them to meet with the insurance commissioner and request a meeting with the insurance commissioner and a study to allow them to lower their surplus capital adequately enough so they can write some more mortgage insurance. So I think it's a good bill. It goes towards home ownership and the American dream, and I ask for your support on this.
Thank you. Let's go ahead and call the roll.
Solorio?
Aye.
Solorio, aye. Garrick?
Aye.
Garrick, aye. Anderson? Anderson, aye. Calderon? Carter? Carter, aye. Fuhrer? Fuhrer, aye. Hayashi? Hayashi, aye. Nava? Nava, aye. Nilo? Nilo, aye. Torres?
By the way, I forgot to mention. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. Forgot to mention if there was anybody interested in co-authoring the bill, we'd be happy to accept some amendments today at the request of your advice, the committee staff.
You can add me as a co-author, please.
Great, thank you.
Let's now go on to your next bill. That's item number 5, SB 396.
Okay.
Over one.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. Bill 396 requires the Commissioner of the Department of Insurance to report the pass rate of first-time applicants for specified agent licensees. If the pass rate is less than 65% for a specific license, for a specific license category, then the Commissioner shall determine the pass rate of examinees by demographic information, including ethnicity, race, gender, and level of education. Existing law requires that the Department of Insurance annually make a report to the Governor, the Legislature, and the committees of the Senate and the Assembly having jurisdiction over insurance, showing the general condition of insurance and related matters in the state. SB 396 is necessary to ensure the current insurance agent license examination utilized by the Department of Insurance are not acting as an unnecessary barrier for new agents to enter the field. The state has an obvious interest in ensuring the agents are well qualified and educated in the many state laws enacted to protect insurance customers. Additionally, the state also has an interest in ensuring that the current examinations do not necessarily limit entry to the field, limit competition, or otherwise make it more difficult for consumers in underserved markets to get needed insurance products through an insurance agent. So the bill will provide the legislature with information that will allow for a more informed review of these issues. Similar measures have been enacted in recent years in many other states. And this bill grew out of recommendations made by a task force organized by the ACLI and NAIFA, which has been studying factors that contribute to a declining population of licensed life insurance agents and the impact that it has had in the delivery of insurance products. So the collection and reporting of this data should provide the Department of Insurance with the tools necessary to ensure that no bias exists with respect to specific insurance agent license tests. The ultimate objective, of course, is to provide the ability to ensure that the specified insurance license examinations are equitable regardless of the individual applicant's educational or cultural background. I would ask for your aye vote.
Before we continue with the witnesses, we had spelled out some technical amendments you may want to consider accepting.
Yes.
We'll take those
I'll
as
take those as amended today.
Thank you.
Sir.
Let's hear from the witnesses in support.
Good morning. John Ross on behalf of Citigroup and its subsidiary Primerica Life Insurance Company. I'll keep this brief. The effort here is part of a national effort, as the Senator said, to try and look at what have become unnecessary barriers in some instances to access to this field. The bill does two things. First, it has the department report what the overall pass rate is by different license categories. Second, if that pass rate drops below a certain threshold, 65% for that license category, it requires the department to dig a little deeper, collect demographic information, and ensure that there's nothing in the exam that's resulting in disparate pass rates between different ethnic groups, gender, or based on level of education. That information could be collected on a voluntary basis by the department, reviewed in the event that the pass rates for a particular license drop below a certain threshold. This has been done in 5 or 6 states to date. They are finding in some states disparities between pass rates based on different ethnic lines, gender lines. Illinois has successfully narrowed those gaps by doing a psychometric review of their test to ensure that there were no unnecessary biases in the exam. We think that's a good thing. If we can eliminate bias and do it in a way that ensures the integrity of the exam, that's a good thing, and that's why we're for this.
Thank you. Let's hear from the next witness, and then we have a question by Assemblymember Anderson, but let's hear from the next witness.
Mr. Chairman and members, Ted Angelo with the Association of California Life and Health Insurance Companies. We're also in support of the bill. We've supported steps over the past about 3 or 4 years. One was carried by former Chairman Vargas, which allowed for online pre-licensing, so it could allow for people to get into the market that weren't agents, didn't have to go to a course after working a full day, so they could study and become agents. The second step was to allow for a split license, a life-only license, which was carried by Mr. De Leon 2 years ago, and that was supported by the Department of Insurance, as well as steps to meet a need for the middle market, as well as bolster an aging workforce in the life insurance agent workforce. So this is another step to gather data that the department is getting since that occurred, and we support that effort.
Thank you. Assemblymember Anderson, did you have a question or comment?
I did. How long has Illinois had this policy, and do we have any? Well, first of all, how long has the policy been in place?
There's Illinois began collecting information and working on their issues following litigation in the early 90s. The state actions in recent years have been in Florida, Arizona, New York, Colorado, Louisiana, but there are a number of states that, following Illinois' experience, have passed laws to collect information and do a psychometric review of their tests.
With the collection of that data, what did they find?
Well, what the most recent data reported in Florida showed a difference in pass rates between white and African American and Hispanic applicants of close to 20%. Illinois has succeeded in narrowing that gap to close to 10%. And so the other states like this have said, let's first get the data. It doesn't mandate a particular review. Let's get the data, look at it, determine if there's any cause for concern in the exam here, and then take the next step from there. This is the first step. The department, has when they got their questions, we're told, and set up their tests, they had some psychometric review done and have gone to great lengths to avoid bias. We're hopeful that that is in fact the case. This is just a check to make sure that what we're doing that we think works actually works.
When you're looking at, and I don't mean to put you on the spot because you didn't know about this question, but when you're looking at complaints about insurance agents, is there any difference between Illinois, who's done this and narrowed the gap, and say California as a percentage?
I don't know the specific answer in Illinois. I do know that the report that is currently required by the department that this section amends requires reporting of complaint information by license type. So this is another, data point that can be collated. But my understanding is that the experience in Illinois has been quite successful. They didn't raise the top, necessarily increase the pass rate for everybody. They were able to narrow the bottom up without the top going up, and that was based on review by people who are specialists in sorting out biases in the questions.
And then I have a question of the author. Have you thought when they take the tests, do they do this in person? How would somebody be able to be identified by? Is there a way to approach this by simply blanking out who the applicant is, assign them a number, and let them take the test with a number only, so that there is no biasing purposefully?
The Senator, do you want me to answer?
Yeah, no, go ahead.
I'm sorry. The bill calls for the information to be provided voluntarily. I mean, it doesn't require any applicant to provide the information. That's the same process that's been used in other states. You don't have to provide the demographic information, but the result in those states, most recently Florida, that have done that is that close to 95-96% of people voluntarily provide the information.
I think the focus in the bill is that we don't want racial or gender bias in the questions themselves,
Correct.
whether they're written or oral.
I get that part. What I'm worried about is setting quotas and then having people who are not.
This is not about quotas.
It isn't today, but it will be tomorrow. So what I'm concerned about is, as we move forward, in Illinois, if they have a higher spike of complaints, in that we've lowered the standard, in that we're going to have people that aren't necessarily qualified. I don't want it to be biased. I want to get qualified people out there doing it, but I don't want to jeopardize the standard of quality in the applicants.
Nor do we.
Who pass. And so that's why I was driving towards. That I was worried that how would we protect against that.
Let me just comment. The data that's provided wouldn't lower the standard of the testing. What it would do is make sure that there are no, just as they did in high school examinations and exit exams, they'll make sure that there are no bias questions that make that examination unfair. But that kind of question, if you think about it, some kind of a technical insurance question, there's not going to be a bias or cultural difference there, but there might be, how they would handle a certain, if there's an essay question, and they're looking at that in terms of where those people come from and what their cultural differences are.
And then my final question is, if this is voluntary, and I wanted to put down that I'm from Chinese, and I'm actually Swede, how would you discern, and how do you, what are the protections that people just simply put down any bogus thing they want?
Well, I mean, the census, all the information that's provided.
Why don't?
I'm sure there's a perjury. I mean, you're perjuring yourself if you're lying. You're taking a state exam, so you have to. You're breaking the law.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Very good, Assemblymember Nava.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think this is important information to have. I'm reflecting upon because this can be done very subtly. There's any manner of nuance that can distort the results. When, for example, when I first applied to law school, and I'm like 61 years old, so that was a long time ago.
God damn, that was ancient.
It's like we barely had books. We had to carve stuff on stone. But one of the questions on the application was name 3 attorneys. Well, in my family and my history, we didn't know lawyers.
Good for you.
We didn't know lawyers. So I was at a disadvantage. I was unable to identify 3 attorneys on that form as references. Many years ago in California, the MCAT, which was the examination for physicians, had a question that asked which wine would be appropriate with which main course. Now, you may say to yourself, what does that have to do with being a doctor? But those folks thought it did. That's why they had it on the test. And so we don't know that the way that the tests are structured don't in fact discriminate based upon cultural experience. And so what you're doing with this is very important. I support it.
We have not heard from the opposition if there is any opposition. Any opposition? Seeing none, any additional questions or comments from my colleagues? The only other interesting notation I would make, and it's in our analysis, that since 1975, there's been a 46% decline in the number of new insurance agents. So as we really are looking at these tests, we're really looking to make sure that there's going to be a new wave of insurance agents available to provide these products. So again, over the past 30 years, a 46% decline. So I think that this bill directly addresses that shortage as well. Would you like to offer a brief close, Senator?
I just want to, close in saying, our objective here is, again, to provide the ability to ensure that the specified insurance license examinations are equitable, regardless of the individual or the applicant's educational or cultural background. That's for I vote.
Thank you. Let's. Do we have a motion second yet? Do we have a motion? Assemblymember Fear, second by Assemblymember Carter. Let's go ahead and call the roll.
Solorio?
Aye.
Solorio, aye. Garrick?
Aye.
Garrick, aye. Anderson? Aye. Anderson, aye. Calderon? Aye. Calderon, aye. Carter? Aye. Carter, aye. Fuhr? Aye. Fuhr, aye. Hayashi? Aye. Hayashi, aye. Nava? Aye. Nava, aye. Nilo? Aye. Nilo, aye. Torres? Aye. Torres, aye.
The bill has 10 votes. That bill is out. Thank you. You have one final bill today, Senator.
Yes.
That's item number 6, SB 397.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And members, in 2003, the legislature passed and the governor signed SB 620 by Senator Scott, Chapter 547, Statutes of 2003. This piece of legislation is a significant consumer protection measure aimed at protecting seniors. Pre-need policies typically provide for the funeral and burial expenses for insured. These policies provide seniors with the peace of mind that comes when knowing that the funeral expenses will be paid for and will not become a burden to their loved ones when they die. Because pre-need policies are so different from investment products targeted in SB 620, SB 397 provides to lift the 24-hour notice requirement specifically for this narrow band of insurance products. However, the bill maintains the integrity of the law by requiring that any agent selling pre-need policies to deliver a notice to the senior prior to the start of the meeting, and if the senior purchases a policy, the notice must be signed by the senior along with the application for insurance coverage. Current law simply requires that a notice be provided. Furthermore, SB 397 would require not only delivery of a notice, but also that a signed copy be retained by the insurance provider. In addition, SB 397 actually expands the scope of the existing law by providing a new bright line, increasing the free look period to 60 days during which a full refund is available. The expansion of the free look period is important because it will allow the consumer to go through at least one, if not two, premium payments, thus allowing them to determine if the product really does fit in their monthly expenses. And finally, the bill will require the insurer to notify any persons designated by the purchaser that a policy has been issued and that there is a 60-day right of cancellation and how to go about exercising that right. These changes will provide additional consumer protection to thousands of new policyholders. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Thank you, Senator. Question from the other Calderon.
So, in other words, this law will apply only to policies that have a 60-day free look provision, right?
This insurance policy will provide a 60-day free look, which currently only has a 15 to 30-day free look.
Right. And so, therefore, the notice coming afterwards still comes in time for decisions to be made about whether or not.
Correct. The quote bright line used to be the notice.
Yeah.
But the bigger bright line now is 60 days to look at the product.
Okay.
Let's hear from the witnesses.
Mr. Chairman, members, George Miller on behalf of Assurant Life, the sponsor of the bill. I don't have a whole lot to add to Senator Calderon's opening statement. In fact, looks like my statement. But there are two important things. One is that the $10,000 threshold has been in place since 1974. Apparently, they thought that was an adequate amount in 1974 for the average funeral. We're asking for it to be raised to $15,000. So in 35 years, we're asking for a $5,000 increase. And the other thing is that when SB 620 was passed, there were no complaints. It was a broad-based, sweeping bill, and in this area, the Department of Insurance was specifically asked to see if there were any complaints from consumers, and they had none. But it was an all-encompassing bill, and this bill seeks to address some of the concerns in terms of policyholder senior protections in lieu of allowing us to increase that cap.
Thank you. Next witnesses.
Terry McHale with Aaron Reed and Associates, representing the California Funeral Directors Association, and we're in support of the bill also.
Thank you.
Jerry Desmond Jr. with the Cemetery and Mortuary Association of California, in support and believe the bill is tailored to the specific situation that's addressed, and we're comfortable with the 60-day bright line.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, members, Chris McKaylee on behalf of SCI California Funeral Services, also in support.
Thank you. Any individuals in opposition to the bill? Seeing none, we do have another question by Member Calderon.
When does the 60 period start? After the 14-day notice is received?
The 60-day period will start when you sign your policy, when the policy is consummated.
So it's not a 60-day cancellation policy, because they won't know for 14 days later.
No.
Right?
They'll know at that time that they have a 60-day free look. In addition, they will receive via the mail the additional information reminding them that they have a 60-day free look, as well as anybody else they may designate, family members, financial advisors, or what have you.
All right.
Very good. Any other questions or comments from my colleagues? That would save the committee some time. So if the senators could
I think he's
caucus,
trying to help me.
If we
I
could
think
have
he's
the
trying to help me.
If we could have the Calderon's caucus ahead of time, that would be helpful. Now we know what that's like. Seeing no other questions, I do want to thank the Senator for bringing this forward. We did have some technical amendments that you were to look at, and I think your staff indicated that you were fine with them. So we'll take those as authored.
Yes, thank you.
Amendments
I
today.
failed to mention that. Of course.
This bill, I think, is another good consumer protection bill. This one focused on seniors, as well as it reflects the fact that prices have increased, including for funeral costs. So raising the threshold from $10,000 to $15,000, I think, is very reasonable. And I thank you for your leadership. Any brief close, Senator?
Ask for your vote.
Very good. Let's call the roll.
Solario?
Aye.
Solario, aye. Garrick?
Aye.
Garrick, aye. Anderson? Aye. Anderson, aye. Calderon? Aye. Calderon, aye. Carter? Aye. Carter, aye. Fuhr? Aye. Fuhr, aye. Hayashi? Aye. Hayashi, aye. Nava? Nilo? Aye. Nilo, aye. Torres? Aye. Torres, aye.
Bill has 9 votes.
Thank you.
It is out. This is our last bill for today. If anyone needs to add on, please come and do so.